Okay, talking about list coordinating and then using your technology to best list coordinate. Hey, Robin, mute your mic. And so go ahead. These classes, this is the first time I've taught either of these classes. So feedback is welcome, and I apologize if things are a little bit rough, and I will definitely be continuing to refine them and everything. I at least recognize some of your pretty faces from the classes earlier this week. This is the third list running class that we've had this week. Mistress Emma ran one on Monday about running large lists, and Mistress B ran one yesterday on running super small lists. This is going to aim to be a generic. I'm trying not to do too much overlap with either of those classes, and so I may refer to both of those. They're recorded, they're on the Academy. Go and watch them. Short, 30 minutes to an hour, fantastic classes. And so if I skip over something, I'll go, hey, go look at B's class. She covered this really well, because I don't want to duplicate a lot of information here. Introduce myself. I did not do that. I am Lady Nicaize. I have been playing for 5 years now. I just had my 5-year anniversary. And I've been running lists since about year 1. When now Danya Rixon went, hey, I need you to help me, because she was suddenly the marshal in charge of a list and needed someone to help her out. And since then, I have been running lists. I mostly run rapier lists. I've helped with queens numerous times. I've run Pinzik, Rose Tourney, and along with Countess Michelle, and have helped with the Gulf Wars Rose Tourney. I've run plenty of chivalric lists as well. I know that my terminology will probably default to the rapier side of the house. Nothing I say is specifically rapier. That's just because most of my personal experience lays there. I kind of default over there. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen and let you guys look at this document, and we will get going here. Can you please enable screen sharing? So, let's see. While we are doing that, I'm going to go ahead and talk about a topic at the beginning. I have specifically tried to avoid saying list mistressing. I know that the title of this class was list mistressing. I am personally trying to move away from that term, and I know a number of other people are as well. It's inherently a gendered term. That has to be the women, it has to be the wives, it has to be a role, and it really isn't. And so I'm trying to use list coordination and list coordinator as a non-gendered term, which doesn't have any other implications about mistress or minister or anything like that. I apologize if I slip up and use the old terminology. I am also still getting used to this change. Okay. So I'm going to be stepping through this document, and please chime in if you see anything that I don't cover or if you have any questions. Kat's going to be monitoring the chat for me, so you can type something there, you can raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself. So I know we have some people here that I don't think have ever run a list before, so on the very basics, we have a tournament in the SCA. Someone has to keep score. Someone has to keep track of what's going on. And that person is the list coordinator, and their responsibilities are to create that list of fighters. I'm presenting a system where we use cards to track the fighters and their win-loss records. As the list coordinator, you are also going to have a say in the tournament format. because sometimes you go there and, okay, you have a sponsor of the tournament or you have a marshal in charge and they know exactly what they want to do. Other times they're like, I don't know, we're having a tournament. What do you want to do? And so we talk a lot in here about picking an appropriate tournament format. Your other responsibilities are, of course, creating your pairings, communicating that to your list heralds, and then recording the wins and losses to determine the winner. Very specifically, not your responsibility. You're not a marshal. Being a marshal requires being authorized. You are not there to ensure the safety inherently of the fighters on the field. You're busy and you can't be watching everything. So you're specific, even if you are authorized as a marshal, you're not wearing your marshal hat when you're sitting at that list table. Secondarily, your responsibility is not inspections. Again, that requires an authorization. You are not inspecting. Sometimes people will come up and try and hand you their authorization card. I will always say, I will look at this card to get the proper spelling of your name. That's all. That is because you do not want any assumption that, oh, I got inspected because she took my card and she looked at it and it was all good. No, you're not inspecting. If a marshal in charge asks you, hey, can you please ensure that all of the fighters present their cards to you and that they have this authorization by this date, you can make that agreement with your marshal in charge. But by default, you have no responsibility to ensure that the fighters are authorized and available to fight on that field. Other kingdoms will sometimes have different things there. I'm not sure I saw anyone here who is not on Stioran. On Stiora, the marshals handled their own inspection. Other kingdoms will sometimes do something different there, so I have a few comments about that. Okay, so that is our basic what we are doing. So now you have agreed to run a list for a tournament. What is that going to look like? You should be arriving at the tournament field at least 30 minutes before the tournament starts. This gives you time to get your seat, talk to your marshals and your sponsor. I'm using terms here. I guess I should go back and define them. Marshal is, you have, oh, heavens, we do have out of kingdom. Thank you. We have a marshal in charge of the event, someone who's basically the head marshal and ensuring the safety of the fighters involved. They might be inspecting if the fighters need inspection and that sort of stuff. So I'll talk about the marshal a lot. I'll also talk about the sponsor. Sometimes you'll have a sponsor, whether it is the Baron and Baroness because you're doing a baronial championship, or roses because you are doing a rose tournament, or the Sable Shields run a tournament. You'll have a figurehead that is hosting the tournament. And so I'll refer to a lot of when you should defer to the sponsor of the tournament. But arrive at your tournament 30 minutes before, discuss the format, make sure you have all of your equipment, and then start signing people in. Once you've started signing people in, when that time comes, talk to your marshal, your sponsor, your heralds, go, is it ready to start the tournament? Give a 5-minute warning before you close the list. Grab your nearest list herald and say, hey, give them a 5, please. That way you get your stragglers come in and everyone's signed up. Once you have your, well, actually even while you are getting some of your people signed up, you start creating your pairings for the first round. You then hand those pairings off to your list heralds. You start your tournament, and as the fight's complete, you take the cards back, document the results, and start it all over again. Start your pairings for the next round and complete until the end of the fight. We will go into a lot more detail on all of these aspects. At the end of the tournament, you'll have a winner. That may just be obvious due to the format of your tournament, or that may require communication between you and the marshal and the sponsor. And finally, you need to dispose of the cards. At the end of the tournament, I always offer my cards first to the sponsor of the tournament. Sometimes a queen at Queen's Champion will want to have the cards to take into the White Scarf Circle so that she can discuss some of the candidates, or to look over them, or just as a souvenir from the event. If the sponsor does not want the cards, I will tell the fighters they are welcome to have their cards if they would like. If no one wants the cards, I put them in my box. And then when I get home the next day, I clean out my box and I throw them away. Do not throw away the cards immediately, because if an hour later someone comes, hey, so there's a problem, it's really nice to be able to go back and refer to those cards. Okay, so any questions right now? I'm not seeing anything on chat. We will keep going. Tools of the trade. This first section, important items, I always have these on my person at any event I'm attending, whether I'm planning on list mistressing or not, because if I have them, I can pull it out. Index cards, it's your bread and butter. That is how we track our fighters and how we track the pairings, how we track the win-loss record. Writing utensils. Bia made a very good point about ensuring that your writing ink is waterproof, because if it's misting or you have sweaty fighters, you do not want your ink bleeding. Having a couple different colors is sometimes nice as well. Having photo albums or list books of some sort is very handy. It's not necessarily required, but it's definitely handy. There's a number of cheat sheets that can be helpful, especially if you have the potential of a round robin tournament. We'll go through some round robin cheat sheets, and I'm going to definitely defer to Mafanwe's class notes on, she has some really great round robin sheets that you can just print off, put into your list running box, and be done with. And then make sure you have some scratch paper, a small notepad, or whatever you have, because it will come in handy. Optional nice to haves. I strongly recommend, if you run lists, if you want to be able to run lists, have a storage box or a basket or something specifically for your list supplies. It can stay in your car until you get called to run a list. I have a little basket basket. It's this big, teeny tiny, has my cards and my books and everything I need. And every time I go to an event, it gets tossed in the backseat of my car. And because more than once, someone's gone, hey, Nicaize, do you got a second? I got it. Also, you notice on here, I have a nice hard surface. This works as a secondary writing surface. Sometimes they don't have a table for you. Having something that you can write on is very handy. I've run entire lists on top of my box there. Also, a clipboard. I have a clipboard here, which has like a storage compartment. And there's times that I'll also use this if I think I'm going to need a larger surface. I can store cards in there, pen, pencil, and it's an all-in-one list box. It's a little bit more mundane, but something that I definitely enjoy. Paperweights. It gets very windy sometimes. Having small rocks, bean bags, or whatever paperweights you happen to have is convenient and keeps you from having to put your cards in your mouth and hold them there to keep them from floating away. And to that end, also paper clips, rubber bands. There are definitely times that it's convenient to be able to set cards aside in collections and not have them fly off. You're at a tournament, everyone's fighting, everyone's busy. They may not always think about you, the poor list coordinator sitting on the side of the field. Bring your chair. They may have one, they may not. I have a small fold-up table that I usually bring as well, or at least I leave in my car if I may need it. They usually try and provide those, not always. Sunscreen, hat, water, mug, snacks, everything you're going to need in order to be able to sit at that table for 2 or 3 hours. And I'm also going to make the side note, at that 30 minutes right before you arrive at the field, hit the porta-john too right before you do that. Because, yeah, you're going to be tied to that table for a few hours. Okay. So you are running your list. You have gotten there, you have all of your stuff, and things are fantastic. You have your first fighter come up to you and they go, so what's the format? I don't know. You look at your marshal, you look at your sponsor, and they go, I don't know, what do you think? So this is going to be probably our biggest section, is talking about different formats. Sometimes they will know exactly what they want to do. This is the Onstjoren Rose tourney. We do a double elimination, best 2 out of 3 double kills or refought once. Done. Decision made. You're good. Other times you show up to some random baronial championship and the Baroness has never watched a rapier fight before in her life, and you tell me. So talking with Master Robert McFarlane last night, he was like, make sure you tell them once you decide on a format, don't let anyone change it. Don't let anyone come to you and say, hey, but wouldn't it be cool? So that's what that first line is. Once the marshal, the sponsor, and the list coordinator have decided on a format, that is the format. I don't care if Duke Muckety Muck walks up. Don't let them do that, and they will try and do that to you. So when we are determining our format, what is the goal of this tournament? Is it to have fun? Is it to make sure that all the kids get as many fights as possible? Is it to ensure that all of these varied fighters get to fight people from different regions? Is it to determine a baronial championship? Depending on what the goal of the tournament is, that's going to affect what format we choose. Other things that you need to be considering: time. You have an hour to run this tournament. I'm not going to do a 12-man round robin in an hour. The number of fighters. If I have 38 people, I'm not going to do a round robin. If I have 3 people, I'm not going to do a single elimination bracket tournament. Know how many fighters you're going to have. And then the space and the number of fields. Some of the formats are more space conscious than others. A bear pit, for instance, is going to get you a lot of fights on a fairly small area of fighting field.
Hey, Nicaize, can I interrupt you for just a second? So you
Please.
have a question in the chat. So when Duke, what's his face, comes up and says, I want this format, wouldn't it be cool if, what do you say to shut him down?
I'm sorry, the sponsor has determined that this is the format. That would pretty much be the best way to do that. It's always the nice smile on your face. Oh, sorry, put on that customer service face for you. And eventually, lean on your marshal if you have to. I mean, I have tended to be the list coordinator as sort of the lowest ranking person on the field. And so I will totally hide behind my marshal in charge. If I have Master Avery as my marshal in charge, I know he'll back me if I say something and someone questions it and, Master Avery, I told them this, and then they argued with me. He'd go, listen to your coordinator. She's in charge of this. You know, don't be afraid to hide behind the if you have more senior people there as well.
Yeah, you had another suggestion. Interesting idea. If you win, you should totally run it that way next year.
I love that, Ellen. Thank you. You are a mistress of these sorts of comments. That is a good one. I'm going to have to remember it.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
In my list heraldry class, I always tell my list heralds to defer to the coordinator of the list. Mm-hmm. Mostly with list questions. What's the format? Ask them. You know, who's paired with who? Ask them. Obviously. Now you said you guys are you consider your guys the lowest ranking guys in the circuit, and that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious for my future classes and for your future coordination. Would you rather the list heralds defer to you and then you defer questions up, or do you just want to kind of put us on the same tier and point everyone at the guy running the show, whoever that is?
I actually, my intention when I was saying I'm the lowest ranking is I'm a lady. I don't have a grant level award. I'm not a countess. I'm not a mistress. You know, it's one thing when you come up to, you know, Countess Michelle and question her as the list coordinator. It's another when you walk up to this nobody newbie in the SCA who's running the list. I think that what you're doing with your list herald, go appeal to the list coordinator and have them take it up the line. Have your list coordinator be the point of contact between your heralds and your marshal. I think how you're doing it's fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we are going to talk about some of the formats. I'm going to go into some of the pros and cons of these formats. I'm not going to go into all of the details of exactly how they're run, mainly because Bia covered this fantastically yesterday in the small list class, as well as if you look at her notes from that class, she attached Mafonway's List Coordination 101 class notes, and those also cover a lot of these very well. And so I don't want to duplicate that effort. So I'm going to mostly talk about the advantages and disadvantages of these various formats to ensure why we would choose which one. Round robins. That's basically everyone fights everyone else. It is fantastic for small numbers of fighters when you want to make sure that everyone has lots of fights. Even if you have a slightly larger number of fighters, you can split into multiple pools. If you have 6 times 3, 18 fighters, you split into 3 round robin pools of 6. Once each of those has determined a clear winner, then you do a finals with your 3 winners out of your 3 pools. It can definitely take a long time if you have larger numbers. This is a fantastic format for a small number of fighters where you want to make sure everyone gets fights. A single elimination bracket. This is your classic 2 people fight. The winner goes on, the loser's out of the tournament. This, on paper, is going to be your fastest tournament format. It's your simplest to run as a list coordinator because you can just toss away those loser cards and you don't have to worry about, oh, have these people already fought each other or have they not? You don't have to do any counting there. And sometimes these can take a long time, especially in the higher stakes tournaments, because people get very uptight about not wanting to make a mistake. And so you can end up with stalemates. I've heard stories of 28-minute long bouts for single elimination tournaments because no one wants to put that first step out there and run that risk. I would not run a single elimination for a high stakes tourney. I mean, okay. That being said, crown tourneys usually run as single elimination. I don't run crown tourneys. Queens is almost always run as a double elimination. Double elimination. Everyone gets a chance to fight, lose once and keep fighting. These are a little bit more complex as the list coordinator because you need to make sure for your subsequent pairings that the people didn't fight in previous rounds. Not a problem on the first round, not much of a problem on the second round. When you get to the fifth or the sixth round, these people fought each other and they fought each other and they fought each other. It's a little bit complex. If you go back and look at the class that Mistress Emma taught on Monday about handling large lists, she actually presented an interesting method of ensuring that your fighters weren't refighting the same people with a more algorithmic way of determining pairings rather than a random pairing draw, which is what I personally have tended to do. Let's see, Swiss 5. Swiss 5 is basically the first 4 or 5 rounds of the tournament. Everyone stays in, but they all fight a different style. This can be very good for ensuring that everyone gets at least a reasonable number of fights. It's not going to be great for a super large tournament format. If you're talking about 70, 80 people, that's going to take a really long time. But it sometimes does showcase all of the different styles. And if you have a sponsor who wants a tournament where they can kind of choose their winner, it can sometimes be a good style because you get to watch everyone using all of the different styles. You can look at the win-loss records, but since it's usually not true round robin where everyone fights everyone, you won't have a clear winner just based off of the fights. Oftentimes when we do Swiss 5s, we'll do Swiss 5s, use that to determine a smaller pool, and then do a standard bracket to pare down your final winner from there. If you have a fairly small Bronial championship, Swiss 5s can sometimes be a really good format to use. Bear Pit. This is a super easy one to run as a list coordinator, because all you're doing is tallying how many wins everyone gets. It is a great way to get lots of fights in. It tests endurance as well as prowess. It lets a lot of flexibility if people want to come in late, if they want to sit out for a little while. It is an incredibly flexible format. I'm not going to go into details about running it because Bia covered that great. So these are sort of the main on steel run formats. There are other formats. If you look, find them, discuss them, but you kind of can't go wrong. No one's going to look at you funny if you do one of these 5 standard formats. Once you've decided on your format, make sure that everyone understands it's about a single pass or is it best 2 out of 3. Some of these formats will change a little bit based off of single bout, best 2 out of 3. If you do a single bout, single elimination tournament, that can be a little crazy. That's what the Black Blade tournament series that we did last year was, if anyone remembers that. And it results in some pretty unexpected results at times because there is more of an element of luck. And discuss with your marshal, what do we do about double kills? Don't wait for that first double kill to happen before you ask that question. Determine that before the first lay-on happens, and it also will change the strategy for your fighters. Super large tournaments. You can shotgun the first round. So what this is, for anyone that doesn't know, is instead we have 1 field, or we have 2 fields, or we have 4 fields, and we pair up all of our fighters, and these 5 fights are going to go on this field, and these 5 are going to go here. When you are talking about 120 fighters, you just read the pairings and say, go out in that field, fight, come back and tell us the results. I've not sure I have typically seen this happen in Onstore and kingdom level tournaments. This is very common in the large war tournaments. It is a great way of pushing through your first 2 or 3 rounds of a large tournament quickly. And then the last consideration, if you are determining the fields on which everyone's going to fight, and you have 2 fighters there, the first fight on their field, and they decide to do one of those 15-minute bouts, work with your heralds. Make sure that they move the subsequent fight over to other fields. There's nothing magical about one field or another. The point is to get all the fights done as quickly as possible. Okay, so creating the pairings. The basics of this, randomly draw 2 cards, put them together. These people are fighting each other, except for a few other things. I typically try and do a random draw on all of my pairings because that provides the most equal. There's no sense of bias and that sort of stuff. But there are definitely times that you can't accept whatever the random draw allows you. So if you are at that first level, you start randomly drawing your cards, you put them together. The first thing you want to look at, have these people fought each other before? If they fought each other before, you need to grab a new one. Then the standard is you don't have students fight their teacher. You don't have student siblings, squire brothers or cadet brothers fight each other. And you can record all of these relationships on your cards and make it really easy for you to break up any of those matches that happen. At some of the larger events, so a kingdom level event or a war level event, I also try and do a geographic determination. If I know that these guys fight each other every Tuesday night at Bringalod Pip, I'm not going to pair them up against one another. I'm going to have them fight someone from Namron or Weasenford just so that everyone gets to fight new people. Eventually, once you get to the 3rd or 4th or 5th round, that starts breaking down. And yes, you might have to fight the guy that you fought last Tuesday night, but at least you've gotten a few fights with new people. And then this last paragraph, this is one of the I don't want to call it a dirty secret because it's not a dirty secret, but there are times that it is best to look at pairing and go, that's not a good pairing. Whether it is we have someone that we want to make sure that they have a good fight because, hey, he came back having not fought in 20 years. Okay, I don't want to give him to the newbie who just got authorized last week, and I want to make sure he gets to fight someone that's good. I would not recommend doing this unless you're very, very experienced with that particular field, that particular group of fighters, the dynamics, the drama, all of that. Work with your marshal, work with your sponsor if there are times that you feel like you need to adapt some of those pairings based on personal choice, because anytime you start just, I don't think they should fight, I'm going to adjust it like this, it can very quickly and easily look like bias, and you want to be impartial. You're not trying to fix the field here. Okay, so right here I have my standard blank card. As we will cover later, I do a lot of my cards printed, and so I have a sort of standard blank card that I actually print. There's no reason that you can't do this on a blank index card. Just write their name at top, throw a number over on the upper right hand corner, and document it like that. Here you can see I have the name, the fighter number, how I track. I mean, most people do this. we assign everyone a number, and that way when you are determining who fought who, you don't write names, you just write the number. The group that they belong to, down at the bottom, you see sponsored by. Some of our big tournaments, we will have sponsors. So the Rose tournament, each fighter has to be sponsored by a Rose. We had Tournament of Champions. Each fighter was sponsored or was representing a specific baronial championship. And then relationships, that's what we are talking about with who their teacher-student relationship. And I forgot to mention up there, also romantic relationships. Sometimes people are not comfortable fighting, especially in tournament format, their spouse or their partner. And I try and respect that. And if it gets late enough in a tournament that they get drawn together, I'll usually grab them and go, hey, at this point, you guys need to fight. What do you want to do? And sometimes, okay, I withdraw. Sometimes, we're cool, we can fight it out. But that is where you'd put your relationships. And then we have, the first line here, opponent. You put the number of the person that they're fighting, and then you have win-loss. You write whether they win or they lose. I always fill out my cards, including who they fought or who they are going to fight before I hand those cards to the herald. That is because if the herald drops those cards or they fly away in the wind, we can figure out our pairings without having to recreate all of them. When those cards come back after the fight, winner on top. Always, most of the fighters know that. When usually the winner will be given the cards and they bring them back, they will hand them to the list coordinator. And every single time, the words out of my mouth, winner on top, I go, winner on top. Or I'll take those cards and I'll go, oh, John Drake, John Drake winner, look up, ensure that that is the person. And that is just because I've had people hand me those cards the wrong way around, or I've had the loser bring me the cards for whatever reason. That verbal recognition of who won the bout is very important. Okay, I see some chat. Is there anything I need to read? Okay, thank you.
Last question.
Yes, please.
You mentioned relationships, and I
Yes.
wouldn't ask this if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. Exes.
Difficult.
Agreed there.
That is one of those positions. If there is someone you are unwilling to fight on the field, tell me that. Okay. And I can talk to the sponsor and determine whether if you get drawn against that person, I'm going to put you on the field, I'm going to make you withdraw, or whether the sponsor goes, just make sure that doesn't happen. Either one is appropriate. It depends on the level of the fight. It depends on the situation. Yes, there's absolutely times that there are two people on the field that should not be holding swords against one another. And work with your sponsor if you ever have a question.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Most of the text here is just what we talked about, talking about each of the sections of that card. Tracking results. We already talked about that. Those cards come back. You write the win-loss on them. When someone is knocked out of a tournament, I always do a straight line through that card. And that way, I never have to recount. So here is an example. Straight line through that card. He is no longer in the tournament. I can still see all the information if I need to on that card, but I'm going to be less likely to accidentally grab it and try and pair him up on the next round. And you just keep pairing them down, have some place to throw your removed cards, and just iterate. Make your new pairings, do your next round. Books. So we talked about books before. My books, like most people's, are just little photo albums. I made little cloth covers so that they're each individually colored. I also tend to write a card. This is the East book. I have a North, South, East, and West book. That way I can work with my heralds. They know which field they are. They know they always grab that yellow book, and it's nice and easy. You put the cards into the book like this, top one, bottom one. The herald can read it out and then slowly fish out the cards while they are in the midst of their tournament, and then hand them to the winner at the end. Last thing, which I'm not sure everyone does, but I try to do, if I know the OP order of the two fighters, I always try to put the more senior, the higher OP person on top, because that's how the list heralds usually like to read it. If you don't know, don't worry about it. This is something we do for queens, you know, not for normal stuff. You know, here I have Duke Gabriel on top, and I have Master John on bottom, and that makes it a lot easier for your heralds if they're trying to do such things. So that is a fairly brief, not as brief as I was hoping, but a fairly brief class on basic list running, list coordination. Before I forget, I want to absolutely thank Baroness Cat for hosting this and doing all of that. That's fantastic. And Mistress Mafanwe, who is the one who originally taught me, and absolutely look at her documentation on this, because I think it's probably better than mine. And then Master Robert McFarland, when I was freaking out about my documentation last night, he got on a Zoom call with me for an hour and helped me with it. So I got to give him a shout out there. And then I'm going to have to, I didn't write it here, and Danya Rixon, who's the one that made me run my first list. So any quick questions on basic list running, list coordination before we move on to technology stuff? Okay, I'm going to keep us moving here. So technology. If you saw these pretty cards that I just showed you, everything's printed and looks fantastic. All of these guys signed up ahead of time on the web, filled out a form. I arrived at the event and had all of my cards printed. How do you do that? So that is a place where doing these Zoom meetings is fantastic, because I can't teach this class at a normal event. I have to teach this with my computer and my internet access. So bear with me if this is a little rough, but I absolutely wanted to show you guys these things. So basics, figuring out how to print the damn cards. Every printer's different. You're gonna have to fight out with your own printer. I would recommend going for 4x6 inch index cards. I would actually recommend going for cheap ones. Oxford. These I get as like an 8-pack off of Amazon. They're really cheap, they're really thin, and that means that they do not get stuck in my printer. Some of the more sturdy index cards get stuck badly in. Oh, yes, Holly, I do mind. You're going to be looking at my thing. She asked me to switch back to my personal thing. I'm going to make you still look at my stuff. Oh, you guys, when I show you stuff on the camera, you can't see it. Got it. Sorry, my apologies. I'll try and remember that. So fight with your computer or your printer for a little while. Figure out how you can print on those 4x6 cards. If you don't have 4x6, use A6 format will usually work as well. Included in the documentation here, I'm going to have a template. So, oh boy. Sorry. So I have a little 4x6 template, and I'm giving everyone access to this directory, by the way. This 4x6 template is a card that you can come in and type things on and then print it on a 4x6 thing. I find it a little bit difficult to create, so I just have a default template. So, and then if you're ever going to be printing fronts and backs, futz around with how you feed them back through to make sure that they don't get flipped. I usually like draw on it and print a few test ones to make sure that I know how to put that second half in properly. If you're going to be doing a custom one side and a sort of default back side, we do that for queens sometimes. Our back of the queen's cards look like this, and the front of the queen's cards are where you have all of your names and stuff. So I print all of my backs first, and then I print my fronts after the fact, because you would kill someone if you printed all of the custom fronts and then did the backs. Okay, so talking about doing, I will usually, especially if I am pre-printing cards, I will print a lot of blank cards for the people that show up the day of. So my blank cards are what we looked at previously, which is just this. I print plenty of blank cards, and truthfully, there's nothing that says Ansturen 40th year Rapier Rose tourney. I can use this for any tournament I run. It's a little bit clearer. And then print your cheat sheets. We talked about round robin stuff. You can do all that. I'm going to show you a little thing that I put together when I was working on this class. I was like, you know, I want to do something special. I've made some custom round robin cards. And again, I've included these in the folder that you guys will have access to. This is sort of the main round robin sheet. This would be for the list mistress, list coordinator to keep. List all of your people. You can see what all your rounds look like. All you have to do is write their names and write their tallies. And I have custom cards for fighter 1, 2, 3. All of the rounds are already written on here. You can hand them out to your list heralds, and you just sit there and write win-loss, and that's it. I have these cards set up for 4-person, 6-person, 8-person round robins. Hint, if you're ever doing odd number round robins, increment 1 and add in a bye, if that makes sense. Because there's really no good way to do some of those odd number round robins. Someone either sits out or you have a bye, do those extra fights. So if you're doing 7 people, you do an 8-man round robin plus a bye. Okay, and now the fun stuff. I'm going to absolutely credit Mafanwe. She was one that clued me into some of this. I've adapted it for the way that I do it, but she was the one that gave me the first hints on how to do this. So I'm running a tournament. First thing I want to do is create a Google form. I do everything via Google because it's all free. Everyone has access. You create a Google form, Grand Rapier tournament, blah, 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 blah. Important information, pre-registration will close. Date and time. Make sure that you have that closing in plenty of time so that you can print the cards. Make sure that you can print those cards when you have time to give the proper sacrifice to the printer gods, because oh my goodness, those printer gods are greedy. So document that. Get everyone you know. Put this out on all of the listservs. Get as many people you can. In here is a fairly simple sign up. SCA name, your complete SCA name. Do you want them to put titles or no titles? That sort of stuff. I usually specify title and name separately because it usually causes less confusion. Your title, your home group, your relationships, and then in this case, it was a Rose tournament, so you're sponsoring Rose. You put this out there and people fill it out, fortunately. You remind them, you pester them, and you end up with a file and you come into here. So, I mean, your Google form, and you have your questions, and then you have your responses. I click over onto my responses, and okay, this is not going to do me much good, but I have this wonderful little button up here, View Responses in Sheet. If you click that, it creates a spreadsheet that looks like this. The important things here are going to be these column names, SCA name, SCA title, home group, etc. And then you have one entry for each of your people. I will usually add a column in here with number. This is what their fighter card number will end up being. So once I have created this spreadsheet, then I will go and create, doing my best to do this quickly, guys, a template. So what this template does is it basically references those variables. If you remember our column headings, SCA name, SCA title, number, home group, sponsoring rows, relationships. You put those in these double curly brackets, and that basically goes, hey, for this line in the spreadsheet, I want what's out of this column and this column and this column. And now we want to marry those two things together. So add-ons, you can get add-ons on Google. This is all free. Document Studio, that is the one. I tried about 10 of them. This is the one that I like the best. Working. Document Studio 17.0.0. It has all of these things over here, and it's very overwhelming. And really, we are going to be looking at two sections: document merge, finish and merge. And I've tried to document this. Document merge, you want to enable it, and you want to give it a template. So select Google Document, change, and then we just select that template file that I just showed you. Markers. Found markers, you kind of take a look at this. Those are going to be those special variables that you're going to be referencing in your template. And then make sure, go whatever export format. I do PDF because I found that works best for me. So you set those settings up, and then you come down to finish and merge. Merge into a single document, and then press run. I'm going to warn you, this is going to take about 2 minutes, so we can yammer for 2 minutes while this runs, because I want to show you what it looks like when it finishes. What I usually do is when I first set up my form, I will go ahead and just put myself in, and I will create a spreadsheet, and I will create my template, and I will experiment and make sure that this all works properly. And also, when you're working on a single row, it goes a lot faster than when you're working on 20 rows or 80 rows. You do not want to be debugging your template with the debugging your template with your full list of fighters. But at this point, I've already debugged my template. I know it's solid. I'm letting it run. So we are slowly processing. While we are doing this, anyone want to jump in with any questions or comments? Nope. Okay. Was there anything that...
How awesome this is. I'm sorry. This is really cool.
I'll tell you a story. Last year, Penzic Rose Tourney, I was running it with Michelle, and Mafanwe was not going to be there, and she's the one that always sets the cards. And so I asked Michelle, hey, do you want me to set this all up? I'm a computer person. I can do this stuff. She said, oh my God, would you? She's, head of Entourage. She's super busy. She jumped all over me volunteering to run the ahead of time online stuff. And so I go to Mafanwe, I'm like, hey, so how do you do this? She's like, oh, I'll just do it for you. I'm like, show me how to do it. Let's talk about this. And she gave me enough hints and what worked for her that I was able to come in, because she did it with actual Excel, and I was able to come in and determine a way to do this with Google Sheets. So now we've gotten through our 2 minutes, and we ran it, and we have now this open merged file. That's my first entry. And I had a slight bug here. I ignore the blank cards. Number 2, number 3. And if I'd had 200 fighters, that wouldn't have taken much more time. And that's pretty much the magic there. Mail merge is your magic. I walked you through a very quick listing of the steps that I did there. Please. Okay, I do not know what PFM means, Bia. I see that on the chat. So, thank you. So, I mean, seriously, I'm an electrical engineer. I've been in the industry for 20 years. I've freaking designed microprocessors, and mind blown when I figured out how to do this. And it's really awesome to be able to do it with cards. So if you set it all up ahead of time, I can close the list on Wednesday night. I can print my cards on Thursday. I go to my event on Friday, and everything looks all fancy and special. And I know Mistress Rihanna, she makes her cards look all pretty and stuff. I'm very utilitarian. You can make this templates as awesome as you can. I will give these links to Kat to post onto the site. And at the bottom of the technology and list coordination, I have this Google Drive, and that will give you this whole folder, which gives you the template, your some of the round robin stuff, plus the copy of how I created the Rose Tournament online registration, as well as my template file. I did not give out the full spreadsheet just because I didn't want to totally put everyone's information out in the world. And please call me up. We'll set up a Zoom and I can walk you through this if you want to do this. I am all for other people learning how to do this stuff. And again, I'm going to thank Kat for running this, and Fonway for giving me the magical words that allowed me to figure this out for myself.
Hey, you had a question about, do you get many last minute entries? And then my add-on to that is, how do you handle those?
That is why I print plenty of these guys, which is the exact same card without those, without the pre-printed stuff. And that way everyone can have a card that looks the same and it's the same format. Awesome. So, size of the tournament, I judge how many I need to do. I don't usually run out. I usually have a ton of extra ones in my basket. Yes, Rix, I did not put a maker's mark on my template. I trust that everyone in our society of honorable people are honorable, and if they learn something from me, they will give me credit, maybe?
Oh, I know. I just want to, because I foresee where this will go, and it will go through many, many, many hands, and people get the link, and I would just love to have something on there so that you've got a little bit of line of credit, because I'm going to make sure.
As my Danya, you're allowed to. No, I will say that, I got this from Fonway, and then I did it 6 ways to Sunday for what worked for me and my system and everything. The big thing that I changed from what she did to what I did is she was doing it all in Excel and all in paid apps. I was able to move it all to Google and free stuff, which...
You had another question. Do you use a laser or ink printer? And if it's ink, how do you deal with rain or spilled beverages?
I use a water fast printer. I don't think it's laser, but it is water fast, and I don't have a problem. I'm not quite sure what to tell you on that. If you're using something that's water fast, then you're going to have to be super paranoid about keeping things dry. If you're really worried about it, if you go, oh shoot, the rain's coming down. Oh, I forgot to mention, what I also will usually do is print that spreadsheet off, maybe format it a little bit nicely to be able to present to the queen or the roses to say, hey, here's who's pre-registered in your tournament. Print one of those for yourself so that you have a safe way of aligning numbers to names. And then you can use some sort of waterfast marker. If you're like, oh shoot, the sky's about to open, I'm going to lose all of my stuff. Rewrite over all of your numbers and then write all of your win-losses in a waterfast marker. And the rest of it's sort of moot. And you can then go back and figure out who was who off of your printed spreadsheet to the side that has your names and your numbers on them. I'm talking off the top of my head here. That is what my first idea would be to deal with the waterfast issue. Yes, pencil is
Can I throw something in on that?
Please.
Background in fire rescue, so dealing with water kind of comes with the territory. Two things you can do. One, if you're planning ahead and you're seriously concerned about water, they actually make waterfast paper. I know several piloting stores that cater to pilots. Don't ask me why, long story, but I know that. The other thing you can do is those what do you call them? Those sheets, those sleeves that you put paper in 3-ring binders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
those
plastic sheets
and a grease pencil. Mm-hmm. You can submerge a grease pencil and those sheets, and the ink will, and the grease marks will stay where they are. We use those all the time to mark down water pressure in the fire department. You can hit them with a hose. You have to scrub them off with like a Clorox wipe.
Okay, because you guys were asking, I just grabbed my water and I grabbed one of my cards that I have sitting next to me, and I just washed water all over it, and it's not bleeding. So yeah, by the way, this is what I was showing you guys earlier. Everyone can see the sexy card that, sorry, Katie, it's Kaz's lost card, but this you can see a good filled out option here. Yeah, I don't seem to have any bleeding. I didn't think I had a laser printer, but truthfully, I don't know right now because I turn over printers every 30 years and I don't keep track. Okay, and my only problem with like the sheet protectors and the grease pencils or anything like that is I don't want to have to be removing it, writing, and then putting it back in. The grease pencil I could do on top, as long as, you know, it's not like a dry erase where it's going to smudge or something.
I've never done your job, so I'm thinking off the top of my head. So yeah. I throw it out there as someone that's had to use it in other functions.
I have done this dozens of times, and I don't think I've ever permanently lost a card due to water damage. I may have had to rewrite maybe one that usually the problems are me trying to spell your name. And what was that again? I can't hear you. Yeah. And spelling names. I find it's very important to spell people's names correctly on the cards. You can do spell and pronunciation, but oftentimes I will give the winner's card to describe who's going to be doing the scroll, and I want to make sure that that's spelled correctly for the scroll. And I'm sorry, you can be my best friend unless your name is John Drake, and not because he's a mod, but because his name's John Drake, and that's really easy to spell. I'm going to ask you to spell your name. I will not spell my Danya's name off of memory, because I'm like, oh shoot, is it A-N or is it E-N? Just spell because and I will also have people I've known for years come up to me, and I'm like, I've just talked to 30 people. I have no idea what your name is. I know you. I don't know your. As a fighter, please be good about spelling. Don't assume that your best friend who is the list coordinator knows how to spell your name or even remembers your name if they've been sitting there with a steady stream of people for the last 15 minutes. Okay. You're welcome, Ellen, for spelling the names correctly for the scribes. So I'm happy to sit here and chat anymore. I'm happy to respond to any other questions. Or we can stop the recording, whatever people want or need.
I have another call at 8:15, so I'll have to jump and I'll go ahead and stop recording. But that was really awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes.